What's up everyone, and thank you for stopping by the channel. Today's project is this troy-bilt pole saw, and the problem is there's a couple of broken bolts that's keeping this engine from running. Let's take a good look at it, find out what's wrong with it, and hopefully we can fix it. In this video, we try and repair this pole saw. However, it may not be the exact repair you need to make to yours. We'll explore other options later in the video. This pole saw was in storage for quite some time, and of course, steps were not taken to ensure that it would come out of storage in working condition. Now, in the last video, we went through the carburetor and cleaned what we could, and also replaced the metering diaphragm. After that, we then replaced the discolored primer bulb, along with the damaged fuel lines with Tygon lines. After all that work, we finally tried to start it and try to tune the carburetor, but unfortunately, it wouldn't stay running. Now, since we didn't do a compression test in the last video, it's probably a good time to try it now, just to make sure we don't have a worn-out engine. So the reading is about 130 psi, and that means that this engine is only slightly worn, but there's more than enough compression for this engine to start and run. It's at this point we notice a fairly large gasket leak coming from the back of the engine. After taking off the rear cover, we found that the gasket on the jump starter wasn't damaged, but unfortunately, we found out that the two small bolts that hold the jump starter to the engine had broken and needed to be repaired. Now, the bolts were only held to the engine with a few threads, so tightening them with thread locker wouldn't be a permanent fix. So with the combination of the engine vibration and the low thread count, the bolts would eventually back out and cause the engine to stall yet again. So we decided to not replace the engine block, but instead we're going to drill out the holes to the next size up and tap it. The better option would have been to use a bolt extractor, but most people don't have one, so the next option is to use this method, and besides, the larger bolts won't break like the original ones did. If you feel uncomfortable doing this repair, then have someone else do it who has more experience. Now, once the drilling was done, I used a small drill bit to find how far we had drilled into the engine, and it looks like about 3/4 of an inch, so it's definitely more than what we had before. After that, we'll use a tap and make some new threads. The threads look pretty good, so we'll do the same repair on the last hole and then reinstall the jump starter along with the rear cover. Now, the holes in the jump starter also needed to be opened up to allow the larger bolts to pass through it. The new bolt heads were also larger than the original ones, so they needed to be turned down so they would fit inside the relief in the rear cover. And of course, we can't forget some medium strength thread locker. This will allow us to remove the bolts later on if we need to. We'll also give it some time for the thread locker to set up before we try starting the engine again. So after several minutes of running and tuning the carburetor, the bolts haven't loosened and backed out, so it looks like we were able to save this engine without replacing the block. In the end, the carburetor didn't need that much tuning except the H screw. What I usually do is find where the engine speed is the highest and then turn the H screw counterclockwise just a bit so it runs cooler. If you set the engine to run at max speed, there's a very good chance that piece of equipment will come back next year with a damaged engine. This was a tough lesson I learned from when I started doing this kind of repair work. So my question is, do you think we should have thrown this engine away on the curb and not fix it, or would you have considered doing the same repair that I did, or do you consider troy-bilt equipment not worth fixing in the first place? Thank you for watching. I really appreciate your time here. Please feel free to ask me any questions, and I hope to see you in the next video.